Hello everyone, my name is Wayne Conley and this is my presentation of my research on biobutanol. Okay, for my introduction, I want to just start off with saying alternative fuels, they're becoming more popular every day and every year just because the gas price is fluctuating all the time, and then you have your normally higher diesel prices. And then we have ethanol, which is already really popular, and it has a good infrastructure because you find it at certain gas stations, and it is cheaper than gasoline. And then you have biobutanol, which can be swapped directly out with gasoline, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Um, the energy density. This is the biggest reason for alternative fuels not being so popular, because you're just not getting the range out of the same amount of gasoline. And then like ethanol, it has much lower energy density than gasoline. And by this I'm saying it has, I believe, 60% lower than gasoline. And where biobutanol has a very small amount lower energy density than gasoline. Okay, for the production of biobutanol, they use a process called ABE, or acetone butanol ethanol. This is called acetone butanol ethanol because that's exactly what it will produce. This process uses super unsophisticated microbes to create the butanol, and there's one problem with that, and that's that they die off faster than they should to be able to make the butanol at a good rate. This process takes about 20 to 30 times more than it would for ethanol, and it's using the same process. Some of the things it's made from is like the sugars of organic feedstocks, and it's also comes from biomass. Um, some of the research that they're trying to do is they're just trying to make the process faster any way that they possibly can. Okay, so now for the advantages of biobutanol. So first off, biobutanol is directly replaceable with gasoline. And some of the reasons for this is because it has a low water miscibility. Um, it also has a very similar energy content and a very similar octane number. Um, it's much safer to handle than gasoline because of its low Reid vapor pressure, um, and it can be mixed with gasoline at the refinery. So this would be before it's stored and distributed. It's also, and the reason for this is because it's not hygroscopic, and it's also not miscible. So it won't contaminate the groundwater if it was to be spilled, and so it's just a lot safer overall, and you can handle it without having to worry as much. Some extra advantages of biobutanol: you don't need to do major overhauls when like to be able to use it in a vehicle, so you can use biobutanol in a regular gasoline vehicle without doing any changes to major components such as the engine. Whereas like if you were to use ethanol, you have to do some significant changes, and that's recommended just to be safely used and run through a normal vehicle. It's also less corrosive. Um, since it's less corrosive, it can be used in already existing infrastructures. This is things like pipelines, filling stations, pumps, and there's a lot more things that it can be used in, just for the fact that it is less corrosive than things like ethanol or methanol. And then for the last of the advantages, um, and this is the benefits of being an alcohol-based fuel. It burns much cleaner than gasoline, and since it uses a biomass that needs to be grown, it captures the carbon dioxide that burning it puts off. So it makes it even cleaner because you do have to grow things such as like corn, and growing that corn captures the carbon dioxide. And so really you're kind of getting a double bonus for help cleaning the air with this type of fuel. Okay, so the disadvantages of biobutanol, like I said before, the production speed. Uh, it takes 10 to 30 times longer to produce than it does to produce ethanol, which would be the biggest problem with biobutanol, and probably the reason that it's not really being used all that much today. Another thing is the energy density. It may be a decent amount higher than ethanol, but it is still lower than the energy density of gasoline. So if people are using biobutanol and they see that they're getting lower miles per gallon with that than they would gasoline, it's kind of hard to keep people from using gasoline just because they think that it's not doing them any good since they're getting worse gas mileage. And then also fuel systems. It is alcohol based, so in some cases it can have trouble with certain fuel system components. Like in my research, it said that it can affect certain level sensors for some fuel systems, which obviously isn't good, and that is one problem with just being an alcohol-based fuel. Some more disadvantages: more greenhouse gases than ethanol. So per unit of fuel, it'll produce more greenhouse gases, and this is because of the lower octane level of biobutanol compared to ethanol. So like if you have a higher octane, you can have a higher compression, and with a higher compression, you just have a better, more efficient burn, so you don't have those greenhouse gases coming out. And then also the viscosity of biobutanol. It's higher, and that can lead to potential corrosive aggradation in spark ignition type vehicles, which is not a good thing at all. Now for the infrastructure. Um, so as of right now, biobutanol doesn't really have much of an infrastructure at all. Uh, Really almost non-existent, I would say. Um, what the infrastructure could be is like very easily it could be made to have a good infrastructure. This can be done simply by using existing infrastructure of gasoline. And since biobutanol is so similar, it won't separate from gasoline when water is present. So you could just use the same pumps and stations and holding tanks. Um, and then the production, biobutanol can take advantage of the already existing ethanols, refineries, holding tanks, pipelines as well. Some recent developments, um, the speed of production. The reason for the super slow production rate is because the organisms that produce the substrate just die off too fast when making it. So scientists have been putting in research and development of new microbes that won't die as fast, and that's for the fermentation phase. And then another thing they're working on is the separation cost. And that's just basically trying to get it so that way the separation cost is lower, and the separation is of biobutanol from the fermentation broth. And then some companies that are actually investing in biobutanol are DuPont, BP, and Gevo. And for the conclusion, I believe it's a very good alternative. I think if it wasn't for how long it actually takes to produce the biobutanol, it would already be very popular. And from what I had read during my research, I don't think it will be long before it is actually popular. For the popularity of it, if ethanol is as popular as it is now, and biobutanol has so many more beneficial qualities, I just can't help to think like how popular will biobutanol become. Um, and then the energy density, biobutanol doesn't have a much lower energy density than gasoline, and it it's actually only about 10% lower. And I think if gas prices go back up to almost $4 a gallon, it wouldn't. I don't think it'll take long before biobutanol really gets up and makes a strong surge into the market. But that's my presentation. Thank you.